Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Pierre Noujaim. Welcome. I shouldn't say as always.
Yeah, what?
Unless we have an announcement to make, and Guardsy's not going to like that too much.
You said that too many times, Dan.
Don't you worry, Guardsy will be back.
One of these weeks.
He's
got a lot of jobs these days.
It's like James Bond, the end of a James Bond movie. James Bond will return. That's Justin Gaard.
Thanks for helping us out.
Great to be back.
Always good to have you. And Lori Fisher is back
I'm
with
a
us
mainstay.
As well. Well,
unless
you're
I'm not
on your way to Vegas or some other.
Yeah,
right.
that's true.
Dan's always here, so we can rely on you, Dan.
I try to be sort of the Cal Ripken of Enough Said.
The cornerstone of the show.
See how that goes.
Well, let's move. There is so much to talk about. We are trying to jam-pack a lot of topics in tonight, so let's get right after it. The Vikings have a lot to worry about right now, most importantly COVID-19. Vaccinated lineman Dakota Dozier was hospitalized after having issues breathing this week. Luckily, he's doing better, but there are other players on the COVID reserve list as well. The team lost in overtime to Baltimore last weekend. They take on the LA Chargers this Sunday. They're going into this game with a record of 3-5. The Chargers are 5-3, Dan.
Well, I don't have to tell you, this is a team that is in crisis on so many levels. You start with the record. There's not any margin for error left, as you know.
Right.
You've got the Dalvin Cook story, which we're going to get to in a couple of minutes. And then you have this COVID outbreak. I call little because as serious as it sounds as it was for Dakota Dozier, it doesn't appear there's a major outbreak yet. Now, we may get new information on that as the weekend goes on. But it is, I think somebody asked Zim, if there was any silver lining to having all of these sorts of things happen to you and all the injuries that they have, including, of course, now Barr might be out. It looks like he's out. Daniil is out. And he kind of smiled ruefully, said, no, there isn't anything good about this. So it's been that kind of season, I think, where there are so many issues at this point and no margin for error in terms of losing any more games.
None whatsoever, and it started last week with Harrison Smith. It was a late game scratch last week in that situation. Very scary situation for Dakota Dozier. I mean, that kind of really opens your eyes a little bit of how we're still dealing with a situation like this. And we talked to Kirk Cousins about it. He said he was in contact with Dakota Dozier to kind of check up on him. And the number that stood out to me, Dan, earlier this week when we were talking to Mike Zimmer about it, 29 close cases. 29. I mean, this is the kind of thing that if this was last year, this game this Sunday could have been canceled.
That's true.
It very well could have been canceled. You have so many close contacts, and we heard that defensive end Kenny Willekes was put on the COVID list today. So
it may not be over.
It may not. It very well might not be over, and that's why I say this reminds me of a situation last year where this game could have been delayed. We saw games last year that were played on every single day of the week due to COVID. It doesn't appear that that's going to be the case. We are at Friday. I believe they would have made a decision by now. But it's still a situation where, as much as everybody would love for COVID to be over and as much we would love for it to be over, it's still a thing and it's still something to pay attention to.
And it's proof, it's on the radio. I've gotten a lot of pushback from people saying, well, you guys don't seem to be emphasizing very much that Dakota Dozier was vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I said, we have no problem saying that Dakota Dozier is vaccinated. And for me, that doesn't prove that the vaccination process was a mistake or isn't the best way to come out of this. It's proof that there was never a 100% certainty no matter what you did. For all we know, maybe Dakota Dozier would be in worse shape if he hadn't been vaccinated.
Who knows?
We could play that particular game. But that, like everything else, has become, this has sort of become a political animal. And now Dakota Dozier's in the middle of that. Let's talk briefly, if we have time, about the team.
Yes.
I still continue. I pounded away on this last week, and I still believe it, even after a game in which the offense went down the field late in regulation to force overtime. The offense is, for me, the problem. There are still too many stretches where this offense ceases to exist, and I don't think it's all the coordinator. I think a lot of it is on the QB, who's too often makes quick decisions to avoid a sack, safe decisions to avoid an interception, and it's all being put on the coordinator in terms of it being creative. There are plenty of plays that Cousins, I don't think, is making, that he could be making, that he's going to have to make if this team's going to rebound.
Vikings analyst Pete Bursic, who joins us every Sunday here, he and I were talking after the show last week. I said to him, and he kind of reiterated to me, when you look at the numbers offensively, it doesn't really make sense that this team is 3-5. They play well enough. They're ranked in the top 10 in total offense, but yet it feels a little deceiving. Their run defense has been terrible.
It has been.
And a lot of that has to do without, Michael Pierce has been injured these last handful of games. That's certainly not going to help. But I'm with you. The offense, yet, even though they're ranked in the top 10, you watch them at times, and there's just, It's just comes in chunks. In the first quarter, they look good. Second quarter, not as good. Third quarter, not as good. Fourth quarter, suddenly they're great again. So which team is it?
Did nothing with the ball with a chance to steal it after the great Barr pick.
Well, phenomenal play.
And that speaks to your point. I think we have the fewest number of sacks, the fewest number of interceptions thrown. That means we're playing it too safe.
Yes.
You have to sometimes take chances to win.
Agreed.
You mentioned Dalvin Cook. Running back Dalvin Cook has his own legal troubles. His ex-girlfriend is suing him, accusing him of assault back in November of 2020. Cook says he is the victim of abuse and is being extorted. As far as we know, he's still going to play this weekend because it is a civil suit. There are no criminal charges, Dan.
Yeah, obviously very troubling allegations, serious allegations. I don't think there's been any discussion about him sitting because this is, as Lori said, a civil case as opposed to a criminal case. And is it okay for us to sort of sift through this without jumping to grand conclusions 4 hours into this thing? I'd like to see it. I'd say there's some damning stuff. If the texts are from that night, that looks awful for Dalvin Cook. Could there be more to the story? I want to hear from, there were apparently 2 other individuals in Dalvin's home on this fateful night in question. There's a lot, I think, to still be sorted out on this story.
And because it's not a criminal situation right now and it's civil, that doesn't make him eligible for the commissioner's exemption list. So he is still eligible to play. And I'm with you. The one thing that stood out to me that made me raise my eyebrows was the text message exchange, because if that is Dalvin Cook's account, assuming that is him, we don't know that.
And from that night.
If we assume that that's Dalvin Cook, it looks really bad. And the one thing I will say is, I've had a chance to interview Dalvin Cook once or twice one-on-one. Sure. It's not that like I know him personally. I don't. I am at Vikings practice every single Wednesday, and Dalvin Cook comes to the podium every Wednesday, and he speaks with us for about 10 minutes. And after, kind of being around Dalvin on a loose basis for the last 3-4 years, when this came up, I was very surprised because it seemed out of character for him. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here and saying I know this person, I know what happens behind closed doors, because I don't. But this situation seemed like something that was out of character for him and made me a little bit surprised. And that's why, like you said, Dan, I want to hear, there are more people that have other pieces of this story that need to come together for us to come to a definitive conclusion on what happened.
He does have, from his college career, 1 assault charge against him. He was ultimately, in that case, I think, found not guilty, if I'm not mistaken. That was concerning at the time. The original, though, the ESPN reporting on this to me was embarrassing because the night before, it was set up, basically the reporter got used by the Dalvin Cook side. And I have no problem putting out the Dalvin Cook side. That's your job as a reporter, but your job is also to put it in some context.
Correct.
And he had no context.
None.
He had nothing about the other half of the story. And to that extent, I think that set up a very misleading situation for when I went to bed that night. I'm thinking it's something very different than at least what has been alleged
We got to keep moving.
Well, let's keep moving then.
Enough said.
All
Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. He was a big topic last week. Well, he says he takes full responsibility for comments that led to people believing he was vaccinated. Remember, he said he was immunized. That not everyone will understand his decisions, but he respects everyone's opinion. Rodgers missed last week's game. The Packers ended up losing. We do believe he's going to play against Seattle this week, Dan.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether the second interview, the big interview he did, was his effort to placate his sponsors a little bit. I don't know. Discount Double Check, and I think there is a health group that he was associated with that has distanced itself from him.
Correct.
Not all that surprisingly. It was, Lori said he took responsibility. He kind of did. He kind of didn't. I thought it was almost like, well, if you felt misled by me, okay, well, I guess. But
sorry.
To me, it didn't sound as if that was still owning what from the beginning was about the deception of it. There are other people, as you know, who have said, I'm not going to get the vaccine, but they at least have owned up to that. They've still gotten ripped.
Correct.
But at least you can say they owned up to it. And that still, to me, is Rodgers' effort to turn himself into some sort of victim here, to me, is the most embarrassing part of this whole episode.
And that's kind of the point I wanted to get to, really, with him, especially after the second interview. And he goes out of his way to talk about the woke mob and the cancel culture stuff. And listen, there have been a myriad of people who have been victims of cancel culture, and unjustifiably, in my opinion.
I agree totally.
This is not one of those situations. I would be the first to say this is cancel culture, this is wrong, I don't like it. This is not that situation, and you know why? Because you brought it on yourself.
Correct.
You brought it on yourself, you lied about the situation, you try to treat everyone like they were a lot dumber than you and say,
Which
well,
he often does.
yeah, you know, and it's like, oh, I did my own research, I talked to medical experts and blah, blah, blah. You lied about the situation, you got caught, you tried to clean it up, it didn't work, and nobody's buying your BS. I'm sorry, nobody's buying it, and it's just, that's the thing that has really bothered me about this whole situation, is him saying, I'm the victim of cancel culture, I'm going to get attacked by woke. No, you brought this on yourself. You brought it on yourself.
He boxed himself in 100%. I couldn't agree more. And some people actually have gotten fooled by this, like he's the guy who should be champion. By the way, why bother with the fine?
Yeah.
NFL fine was, what, $1.50?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Welcome back to Enough Said. 9 people killed, 300 injured at rapper Travis Scott's ASTROWORLD Festival in Houston a week ago tonight. 50,000 people were there pushing towards the stage. There was a 30-minute gap between the trampling and the concert ending. Scott is known for encouraging fans to crowd surf. Lawsuits, as you may imagine, are piling up, claiming concert organizers should have better safety measures there and that Scott should have stopped the show. And again, he said he didn't realize what was going on. Dan, this is a big, big story.
It is a big story, and it's a strange story in that a lot of people, even like a couple reporters who were there, one of them admitted that he went home not knowing what had happened at the front, which seems bizarre to me, but it's a big stage. Again, there's 50,000 people. I'm a little older than you. I'm old enough to remember the Who concert tragedy in Cincinnati. That was in '79, where the culprit is a festival seating deal. And people suddenly hear, I think, some rehearsal going on, and they decide to sort of storm through, and it was too many people trying to get through the doors too quickly. It was an awful situation. And these aren't unprecedented, as you know. They do happen from time to time. But my biggest issue, again, would be, do we have reason to think that the security was lax? There was video earlier of people basically breaking through a couple of security entrances, and it leads me to believe that maybe part of the issue was you did not have good enough security to at least attempt to deal with the possibility of this kind of tragedy.
I think that's certainly, you know, something that they're going to investigate. There's no doubt about it. And this is just a heartbreaking story. I can't imagine being a parent of, you know, your kid goes out to just go see a concert and then they're gone, and they're gone in such just a heartbreaking fashion. I've been to music festivals before. I've never stood close to the stage. So to be honest with you, when I heard this story, I didn't really have any depth of knowledge in terms of how this could really happen, because I'm normally towards middle or the back. I've never really kind of bum rushed the front or needed to be in the front. So I've never envisioned a situation like this being possible even. So this really, and like Lori said, a shocking story and really a heartbreaking story from top to bottom.
Well, and I saw a quote. It was from a crowd management consulting firm who was saying that, you know, this notion, he thinks part of the reason these things keep happening from time to time is that nobody ends up being held criminally responsible. Now, that's complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's possible. But if there are signs that you have you don't have basic security issues in place here, then to me that is how you eventually send a message. You have to try to hold either the people in charge of the concert responsible to try to put in place security that at least gives you a chance to deal with this kind of tragedy.
Yeah, real tragic story.
Yeah, that youngest victim, 14 years old.
Wow.
The Wild winning streak ends in Las Vegas Thursday night, unfortunately, to the Golden Knights. So close, 3-2. My brother was at that game. He said there was a decent amount of Wild fans there, so that's good to hear. Before that, 4 straight wins after they beat the Coyotes 5-2 earlier this week. I would say it is very exciting to be a fan of the team right now, Pierre.
Yeah, I would have no doubt about it. And before last night's game, they had 4 straight games in which they scored 5 goals. So,
Think about it.
And
for this team, that's unprecedented.
Absolutely. The comeback game against Pittsburgh, that was incredible. Followed up by a comeback over the Islanders. I mean, this team just does not quit. I would like to see Kirill Kaprizov put the puck in the net a little bit more than he has. I mean, he leads the team in points last I checked. Ryan Hartman is off to a great start for that team. So I was here in the building watching that game against Pittsburgh, and I could not believe that they pulled within a goal with about 3 minutes left, tie the game with 1 second left, then win the game in a shootout. Nick Bukestad, the former Penguin, getting revenge against his former team. Like Lori said, a lot to like right now. There's, dare I say, fun surrounding this team.
The quality you're defining has been the biggest issue for this team historically, is the ability to just get explosive offensively. And in fact, This is a town where there's a lot of offensive dysfunction right now. Inconsistency with the Vikings, big-time inconsistency for the Gopher offense, which I know we're going to get to later. Timberwolves offense has been a train wreck in the fourth quarter of games. So to see one offense that seems to be purring pretty well, even without a lot of goals from Kaprizov, I think might be the most encouraging aspect of it.
It's been a lot of fun to watch them. And I think last I checked, the numbers under Dean Evison in terms of their record, they're like 51, 28, and 3 or something like that. The record is very impressive under Dean Evison. And, of course, now he's going to get a chance to go a full regular season, which he didn't get a chance to do with COVID. Now you have 82 games, so we'll see how it plays out through the rest of the season. But right now, what's not to like at this point? I mean, they are clicking on a lot of cylinders. I know they lost last night against Vegas. Vegas is a good team. They got off to a slow start this season. I think they're just starting to turn things around. But a lot to like with this team right now, Dan.
They're winning and they're entertaining, and that's the combination. Now, eventually, it's going to be about the playoffs. Sooner or later, you got to take a turn, but we're not there yet.
We just got to figure out whose jersey we want to buy, right, Dan?
Well, you're on that. I can tell. Is this your effort to try to work the Wild organization to just send you one?
No, Pierre, I asked Justin and Dan to buy me a Wild jersey for my birthday, and I'm still waiting.
Wow, that's true. Well, but you said it didn't you say it after your birthday? No, I guess it was the day before.
I gave you a day.
Didn't you win money in Vegas last week?
I didn't bet $1. I did not even put a quarter in a machine.
That's unfortunate.
I don't even know if you can put a quarter in a machine.
I don't know if they allow that anymore.
Next up, Wolves guard Anthony Edwards finished Wednesday night against the Warriors with a game high of 48 points, but the Wolves still lost against Golden State. Minnesota remains on the road this weekend playing the Lakers and the Clippers. They are 3-7 right now, Dan.
Worst insult for the Wolves is in the Golden State game, who kills them? The guy they traded away, Andrew Wiggins, who is capable of that kind of game. We know that. He's not consistent with it, but he slam dunks. He basically, it's a couple follow dunks over Towns' former teammate's shoulder twice. And what makes it worse, Pierre, to me is the guy they traded him for. If he has been dynamic through this whole period, I think you could live with it more. But he's been streaky. He's had a couple of good shooting games. He doesn't run the offense well. And he doesn't guard anybody, and so that's why it stands out that Wiggins looked as good as he did in this game. If your guy that you got back is doing great, you don't even look back at Andrew Wiggins.
I still am going to be a staunch defender of the Wiggins trade no matter what happened.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, no matter what happened, you had to move on from him. You've given up a first-round pick. I think it was worth it to get off of that contract. And like you said, he's a streaky guy. There will be games where he'll be 6 of 19. He'll have 19 points. So
not engaged.
So the fact that he had a great game against the Wolves is not something I'm going to bat an eyelash about. What I will be concerned about is D'Angelo Russell. You said it perfectly. Streaky. Does he run the offense right? Does this team really work with him at the point? Right now, the return is not great. As a team, this team is not shooting the three very well. Cat might be their best three-point shooter, which I think is another. I shouldn't even say it's a problem because the modern big man can shoot threes. But if Cat is your best three-point shooter, then that kind of complicates things in how you want to run the offense. And now Cat is getting a lot of criticism for not being able to play with his back to the basket like a traditional big man can. So what started out as something promising in the first handful of games this season, suddenly this team looks lost and they don't really know what to do, especially with D'Angelo Russell. But he can't guard his own shadow for starters. And if he's not shooting the ball consistently, and this was my problem with Wiggins, if he's not scoring the ball, what does he do for you? What do you do for me if you're not scoring the ball? That's what I pay attention to.
They got out of the contract, that's true, but I think they lost the trade when you factor in that's a top 7 player they could have had and needed this season, and I don't think D'Angelo is a long-term part of the future for this club.
It doesn't seem like it at this point.
This team is it's already lost early, and it's hard to say that, but they're already got so many issues.
Still time.
I don't want to get in trouble again, so I want to just quickly address the Gopher football team. Okay.
Oh yeah, we
got to make sure we cover them.
Ignoring them.
They take on the Iowa Hawkeyes this weekend. Minnesota lost to Illinois last weekend, as we know. The Gophers are 6-3, 5th in the Big Ten. Keys to this weekend's game, Dan.
Well, first of all, actually they'd be better off if we did ignore them this week after the egg they laid against Illinois. That was an embarrassing performance, a disaster offensively. Here's my fear about the Iowa game, Pierre. The word on Iowa is they need turnovers because their offense is terrible. What does that play into? It plays into P.J. Fleck being even more conservative because, well, if we pass, that's how they get the turnovers. And to me, there does need to be, you're down to your 4th or 5th running back. You can't run the same way. You have to be willing to take shots. And my fear is P.J. might not be willing to do that because he thinks that plays into giving Iowa the best chance to win.
Tanner Morgan this season has been up and down.
At best.
At best, yeah. And there's going to have to be a time, no matter who you're playing, there's going to have to be a time where your quarterback has to put the team on its shoulders and come through. Is that going to be this week? Based on what we've seen so far this season, it's hard for me to believe.
I'm with you. The season's still in front of them.
Yeah, oh
if
yeah.
They win the next 3, but they got to go out and do it.
It's Friday Night Lightning Round time. Former Timberwolves coach Ryan Saunders is going to teach sports leadership at the University of Northwestern in St. Paul. His role as an adjunct professor starts this spring semester. Dan?
Well, I think, yeah, you know what? I think he's probably a little bored.
Yeah, I probably would imagine so.
And figures, sooner or later, he's going to get back into coaching as an assistant, I think, somewhere. And he might be chuckling a little bit because he's the coach who had a lot of trouble with the point guard that we were criticizing earlier today.
Right.
He may be saying, what do you think about some of those issues now, because they're still rearing their same head.
I would imagine that class is pretty full.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to take.
Mind it, yeah.
The Gopher men's basketball team won their season opener against Kansas City with new coach Ben Johnson, a former Gopher. Pierre?
Well, you know, listen, the bar, let's be real, the bar has been set low for this team. It's a first-year coach, first year, you know, getting his hands on this team. The wins, you take them where you can get them at this point. Is the team going to be a contender in the Big Ten? I don't expect them to, but what you want to see out of a team like this, out of any young team, improvement.
That's it. I'm worried that, I think they're going to be lucky to stay out of last place. They're going to in the conference. They got a lot of work to do. And go for women. Bad loss in their opener too. Again, plenty of time, but home game against a team you're supposed to beat bad.
And Dan, I know how much you love to talk about the weather. We were spoiled for a long time, and now winter's here, sort of, because the 50s are coming back next week. But do you feel like it's winter now, Dan?
Well, here's I don't know. You haven't been here as long as me.
No.
My theory of happily surviving Minnesota winter is if you can get to December 1 without like 12 inches of snow the rest of the winter, it's a success. Now,
I agree.
We're not there yet, but I think so. I'm fine if there's a little bit here or there. I just don't want to blanket by December 1. And then it's 3 months, I say I can deal with it.
So far, so good, but I have to admit, I would rather be caught in the middle of the Sahara Desert in August than ever see another drop of snow ever again for the rest of my life. But I'm not complaining. So far, so good.
Okay,
I'll
take that.
Sexiest man of the year, according to People magazine, actor Paul Rudd.
Wow.
He's
Paul
52,
Rudd.
but he does not age.
How old did you say he was?
52.
How much work has he had done, do you think?
He says nothing.
Of course
he says he's
Wow.
going to lean into it. He's going to own it, and he's going to get business cards made. He is a comedian too.
Well, are you, Lori? I mean, are you okay with? I mean,
I said
we want to hear
I
from
don't
Lori.
not like this.
Do you endorse this?
I do. I can't really think of another person. Maybe Ryan Reynolds, but maybe he's won before.
Okay.
What about Dan Barreiro?
Dan
I
Barreiro
wasn't
would
in the
be
top
a good
10, I
choice
don't
for
think,
sure.
I mean,
I'll take it. I would just take like an honorable mention. That'd be enough for me.
we should all be so lucky to look that good at 52. I mean, credit to Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Credit to Paul Rudd.
I still am not buying. I think he had some work done.
Well, enough
Come on,
said on
man.
that.
They all lie about that. You know that, Lori.
I've had work
You
done.
know that. Well.